You find me in my 18th century library, my front room, and you find me with a pot of anti-mould paint because horror of horrors, some mould has sort of spread from, I think, from the back of a book, of a mini bookcase, the sort of cardboard backing of it. It's spread along there, and it's actually infected one of my books. The book it infected was Dr. Syntax, which is a really good book actually. It's a biography of the guy who wrote Dr. Syntax, William Coombe. And so the mould sort of spread on the fly leaf, the dust paper, and then onto the front of the book. A little bit inside, but not the pages. Maybe a little there. So I've had to spray those anti-mould and leave them in the sunlight to dry, has been my attempt to fix that. And then I've taken off the back where I think the mould has come from, and I've been painting anti-mould paint. And it's all a bit of a pain because I thought this was all done. I'm also filming this on the new computer because my old computer completely gave up the ghost. Look at that hair. Great Scott. So I've broken my old computer. But then I've also done something that was good. I learnt how to grout. And so I have grouted these tiles. And they're looking pretty decent. And this is the offending little bookcase. So I've ripped off the cardboard off the back. And then I've sprayed it all in anti-mould. And I'm just leaving it there for the moment. I'm glad I got it quickly. I think I'm fixing it all up pretty well. But yeah, it never ends, does it? So the second bookcase isn't as bad as the first, but this is the mark it left on the wall. And here's the mould. And the other one was much worse. So I think these backings are where it's come from. So if I take these off and spray everything down, I think I'll have stopped it. I hope. Now I did something stupid. I spilt coffee. It went everywhere. It went in the drawer. It went in the cupboards. It went in the oven, and it went in my nice new grouting. And then I tried to clean it, and then I've just dug it all up. So I know what job I'm doing tomorrow. That was my beginning. It was basically me complaining about various things that have annoyed me recently. I think I fixed them all. I fixed the grouting. I even did a bit of grouting in the bathroom. I'm not sure I did it as well the second time as the first, but it looks okay. I did all that stuff with the mould and the anti-mould paint, and I had the damp people over, and they came and looked at the cupboard, and they looked at that stuff, and they painted some stuff on there, and we'll see how it goes. I've got a bumper crop of books today, though, partly because I finished The Tale of Genji, which I've been reading since August, so here it is, The Tale of Genji. It's long, it's old, it's really good. This comes from sort of, in England we'd be in the Anglo-Saxon era, it was somewhere between Beowulf and the Song of Roland. And here is a complex psychological novel which actually evolves as it goes on. I've seen it said that it's in two parts. Basically, the part which is the tale of Genji when he's alive, and then the tale of some of his his grandson and a man who's seen to be his grandson but isn't actually. I think it's in three parts. So the first part is Genji is a young man, and it's sort of like Tom Jones. It's this young man. He's got all the sort of talents and skills needed to be, a hip, fashionable young man of his era, but he doesn't have continence. Essentially, he can't stop falling in love and pursuing women, and he keeps doing this, and he's got to learn self-control, and he's got to learn how to do these women right, essentially, and that's what he does. Well, he doesn't actually, but that's what he needs to do. In fact, what happens is one of his dalliances bites him on the bum a bit, and he gets sent into exile which again is what happens in Tom Jones, of course, through the manipulation of others, which is what happens to Genji. He gets sent away. And rather like Tom Jones when he's sent away, he discovers a new love as well when he's away. But he keeps coming back to the first one. Then he comes back and he sorts his affairs out and he puts everything in order. And that is, I think, the end of the first part. And as I say, it's very much sort of a Tom Jones kind of thing. The second part is more sort of Middlemarch tale of community kind of thing, because you get what Genji's up to, and as he's sort of sorted out all the women in his life and sorted out his affairs. And then you get his children, but you get a lot more of his friend Tono Chojo. And I'm probably saying that wrong. Tono Chojo is very much like him, but not quite as good. And you get his affairs and how he's sorting them out and about his children. And of course, there's a sort of a love affair between the two families and things like that. And then the third part, which is really so much more advanced than the other two even. So the first one, you've got everything following one person. It's a very linear kind of story. The second one, you have a lot more characters and different points of view. The third one, you get time jumps and time slips and mishaps and things like that are put into surprise to give there's a surprise sort of ending, there's a fake out death, there's bits where you go, why are they doing that? And then it will go back in time and tell their story up to that point. It's all weaved together. And so not only is the first book an incredibly advanced work compared to definitely anything Europeans are doing, not really compared to what the Japanese are doing, you got like Lady Ichikubo and stuff, but then the second part's more advanced than that, and the third part's more advanced than that. By the end of it, you've had this sort of generational span of these families, and sort of the whole of their society and culture and things. And by the end of it, you've got something that's doing something a lot like Proust. You know, it's all about how time changes and people change and the characters change in this, and about the things we've lost and the things we can't get back. And it's Proust, but I don't want to sort of choke slam the narrator every 3 seconds. So it's better Proust. And it's all in this ancient Japanese book. I mean, there are, I read the Pillar book fairly recently, and there is this weird clash between time periods and norms. So it's a norm to have lots of wives, a main wife and sort of subsequent wives. And so when his way of sorting out his wives is to basically make sure they're all provided for, and he has a big house where they all have a little wing each suited to their purposes, that is not a strange domestic setup in this world. So there's that. And then the fact that sort of the woman of his love, who's called Murasaki, and it's probably because nobody has names, I'll talk about that in a minute, but Murasaki Shikibu. Murasaki is a nickname, and Shikibu relates to the position her father had in the government, so it's not really her name. And she's probably called Murasaki after Murasaki in this book. And that's not her real name either. It's sort of a nickname meaning wisteria. Anyway, Murasaki, he sees this little girl who's about 10 years old, and according to all the people in her life, acts young for a 10-year-old as well, and says, oh, she reminds me of this woman I love, who he loved the woman he loved because she reminded him of his mum anyway. I'm going to take her and I'm going to raise her into becoming a perfect wife. And the family are like, no, that's not normal. I think he was in his early 20s then. You're a 20-odd-year-old man. You can't be taking away a 10-year-old girl and raising her to become your perfect wife. But he does. And she does become it. And she's actually one of the strongest, sort of most reasonable, likeable characters in the book. She's one of the ones you most root for because she does grow to support him in all of his frailties and make him a better person. So it works out in the book, but I mean, he doesn't treat her as a wife until she's older, 15, I think, 14, 15, which seems to be the general age of womanhood in this society. So there's things in it you're like, oh, that's and the way a lot of the women are treated and viewed anyway. I mean, the book starts with all these men getting together to talk about different kinds of women, What's good and bad about them. Now, none of them are perfect, really, because, they're women. And Genji sort of then seeks this out. So almost unconsciously goes and finds women who fit all these different categories in a comparison. And that's the structure of the first part. I don't know if I've described this very well, partly because I'm distracted, because there's an old television wire that seems to have fallen off my roof and it's just dangling in front of me. Just while I can't see it. Oh, there, see? Dangle, dangle, dangle. Anyway, I should probably cut that out, but I won't. But it's, as I say, it did for me what Proust did for other people, I think. And it was long, it's difficult, it's big blocks of text interspersed by poetry that doesn't really work because the poetry is all about the Japanese characters and the different nuances you can read in it. And so, even well translated, this is Royal Taylor, it's very well translated, it does come out as just lots of people doing poetry about flowers. Oh, and wet sleeves, they're obsessed with sleeves. So because women are behind screens all the time, there are brothers in this who have never seen their sisters' faces, but they'll maybe see a bit of the hair under a screen or the big long droopy sleeves. And so there's a lot of sleeve porn in this. But also, when you cry into your sleeve. So you're talking about your wet sleeve all the time. And there's so many wet sleeves in this, because where it's not like Tom Jones's, it's not funny, or at least that first part's not funny. In fact, in the second part, which is more the social comedy, the sort of Middlemarch bit, there's one character in particular who is a daughter of Tono Chujo, but hasn't been raised in the high verified air that they have. But he takes her in because she's his daughter, and she's common, blunt, and she's very funny. Whenever she comes on, she'll say something funny. I haven't said anything about the third part, and the third part's nuts. There's this place, it's like a out of the way town where there was these three beautiful daughters, and the grand Tono Chujo descendant and a Genji descendant both fancy these girls and how they do it differently. And the Genji descendant, who has just a beautiful smell that radiates off him, he thinks he's the nice guy and he does things in nice guy ways, and the other guy is a sort of a horn dog, and it all goes wrong, and somebody fakes their own death and other people die, and this is the one where, for example, you'd be wondering, what were they up to? And then it'll go back and show you what they're up to, and it all weaves together and doesn't end because the book just stops and I want to know how they could have solved this, and they never get to an ending. I'm sure there are writers, especially in Japan, who have sort of done endings for this or something. But yeah, no, really good tale of Genji. It's Genji. It's it's a lot. It took me 2 months essentially. It's not an easy book to read, but a very satisfying book to read. Now, when I was reading that, I read those little things, and I also started, but didn't finish, this 100 Chinese Myths and Fantasies. It's actually a dual language book, but obviously I didn't read this page. I just read these pages. So they're, myths and sort of legends and fairy tales from China, and they start off with the earliest ones and they go on. And there's an introduction at the beginning that's saying that in China, they don't seem to have as many myths and legends, especially considering the huge history of the place, and fairly unbroken history as well. China's always splitting and coming back together and splitting, come back together, but culturally, very long history, not many myths. And the suggestion at the beginning is that their mythic age didn't last for very long, because they set up, they're Confucius, and they set up all these bureaucracies and central things. It becomes a mundane world quicker than, say, in Europe. Everywhere's connected, and so they don't have these legends, but they do have some. And what's wonderful about them is, one, they're all sort of historically grounded, so they'll name the person and where they're from, and they'll often be a historical figure. And two, they're mostly reported very flat and end very pathetically. Which I loved. I love the weird tone of these things. So one of my favourites was this guy. He's going on a journey and he meets a ghost. Ghosts being something that turn up fairly frequently. And he doesn't want the ghost to know he's not a ghost, because that might cause him problems. So he's pretending to be a ghost. He has to keep making excuses about why he can't do ghosty things like walk through walls and things. And he's saying, well, I'm just a new ghost, I'm just learning. And then it ends with, and then the two split directions in their journey. Our hero went on and became a very successful magistrate. They all, there's lots of these people that go out and very weird things happen to them, and then they had a very nice career, thank you very much. And they're reported, they're not told a lot of the time. And part of this the introduction says is because Chinese favours conciseness and smallness, so they're all very concise. But also because they're all set in this world which has all this centralised bureaucracy and stuff. So these weird things are just blips, and then the stories all end with normality resuming. And there's some good ones. Towards the end, though, there is this one author called Pu Songling who tells the tales. The book's called Tales from the Chinese Studio, or Tales from the Happiness Studio, Strange Tales from the Happiness Studio, Strange Tales from the Chinese Studio. It has lots of different titles. And they're more told, and they have more of a fairy tale sort of theme to them. They're from the 15th century. Well, the older ones, they're just really flat in a really just amusing way that made me smile. And like for this one, there's a whole thing about these people who've been cursed to eat grass, and it just says, not long after that, Boyi and Shuki died of hunger. There you go. What more do you need to know about the end of that? Or a few days later, she buried it while praying that the official will not get it. And that was a body. This one, he's had all this dealings with this god who is sort of bilked out of a temple, and it just says, a few days later, he died of illness. And I really loved the pathetic, flat tone of those. The next thing I read, Good Things by Liz Lochhead. This is a play. I've been cast in it. I didn't really intend to go for it, but somebody asked me, and I couldn't say no because somebody asked me. So now I'm in it. It's a sort of soft comedy set in a charity shop in which I play a charity shop worker who is... It's a romantic comedy, so it's... His function is gay best friend, but he's not gay, though people think he is. But then I've got some other parts as well, and I don't even know what parts, because there's been a bit of difficulty casting it, apparently, which is why they asked me. I couldn't find anyone, so they asked me. And so I don't know what other roles I'm playing in this. I start rehearsals on Monday. It will take up my time and give me things to do. It's nice. It's pleasant. It's not laugh out loud. I get some of the better lines actually, because I'm sort of a little camp and a little prissy, and I keep telling the woman that she's good enough, but she doesn't believe it until the end. So there you go. So the next few things I read, I suppose, are sort of autumnal, Halloween-y, horror-y, gothic-y idea. Really, I caught up on short books that I feel like, why haven't I read that yet? So the first was The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. And it's a portrait of Dorian Gray. Portrait picture, isn't it? I always think it's called the portrait of Dorian Gray, but it's called The Picture of Dorian Gray. And you've got these two people sets up. You've got the painter called Basil, and then you've got Sir Henry, the sort of quip-spouting, epigrammatic cynic. And the painter says, I've really fallen in love with this boy called Dorian. He's unleashed this whole new thing in my art and my life. And Lord Henry's like, I want to meet him. And so he does. And the whole point is Dorian has no life experiences or thoughts. And because of that, he's beautiful. Because once you start having thoughts and sins, but even just thoughts, your lines start coming and your hair starts going. And this is all signs of life. And Basil the painter's painted this beautiful portrait of Dorian, and Dorian goes, I'm beautiful. And I want to always be beautiful. I want my painting to show my life and my face, not to show any of it. And through magic, whatever, God, who knows, it happens. And this isn't actually a very good thing, because Dorian never gets the repercussions of any of his actions. And so now Dorian can just go and live and find sensations and not care about any of the consequences, which he then does. And all sorts of... He impacts people's lives. Basically, anyone who goes near his orbit ends up chewed up and spat out because he's so uncaring. Meanwhile, the portrait, of course, is getting uglier and uglier. And things happen. I don't want to spoil it, which is weird. It's a very old book, but I don't want to spoil it. It's very floridly written. Lots of flowers. So, yeah, lots of flowers. Lots of bees. I was hoping for a bee in each chapter, because the first few chapters all had mentions of bees. My favourite one being these bumblebees who are shouldering their way through the grass, and I thought that was good. Sir Henry speaks in Oscar Wilde talk. I don't think he really is Oscar Wilde's sort of avatar in the book so much as he's the engine for Oscar Wilde to put all those little paradoxical epigrams he so likes. And ones he either reuses later or has used before. There's a lot of repeats in it. So you'll read it and go, oh, I know that. And it's like, well, do you know it from the book, or do you know it from where he's put it somewhere else, or where he said it some other time? He could get annoying, Sir Henry, because he claims he's this cynic who doesn't care about anything, but he lives a very sort of ordinary life, really. And he lives out his sort of, not even Epicurean, but his aesthete fantasies through Dorian. The weirdest thing in the book for me was, so it was originally in a magazine, and then when it was put in a book, Oscar Wilde put a preface in it, and the preface is saying that all art is useless, that the books are well written or not written, they don't have a moral, they don't have to talk about things. And if you put that preface in front of, Portsmouth in Earnest, yeah, that really is a play when nothing much happens and it's all about the beauty and the artifice of it. But this is a philosophical book of ideas, and the ideas are, should you live where beauty is your only moral standard, or should you not? And it comes very heavily on you should not. It has a moral purpose, this book. So why he's prefaced it saying, oh, books aren't moral? Maybe it's just his love of paradox. Oscar Wilde. He makes you hate him as much as he makes you love him. He's such a irritating shit sometimes. But it's a really good book. I found it gripping. I've heard people find it boring, especially chapter 11, which is all about all the things that Dorian gets into to try and fill his life, as Johnson would say, fill the vacuity, the hole in his life, and that he fails to. But I liked chapter 11. I thought it was a fun way of showing his sort of degradation through objects. There's a whole book I've got called Things by Georges Perec, which kind of does the same thing that I'd like to properly read one day. So after that, I went on to another sort of famous short ghosty thing from the same time period, actually, that I hadn't read. And so it's The Turn of the Screw. I didn't read the Aspen Papers, just The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. It's my very first ever Henry James. And yes, the man loves a long sentence and he loves a comma. I've seen parodies of this, or heard parodies of this. If there's something called Tales of the Mausoleum Club, which has a parody of Turn of the Screw. So I kind of knew it through people taking the piss out of it, but not through itself. So a governess... Well, no, first it sets up in a very lovely ghost story way. They're all sitting around telling ghost stories, and one says, well, I've got a real one, and it's really creepy, but I didn't write it. The papers are in my office. It's going to take me a while to go and get them. So you talk amongst yourselves for a few days and I'll get the papers. And then he gets the papers and he reads them, and that's the book. And in the papers, a governess goes to a house to look after some children. And the one thing she's been told is, don't disturb the owner. He's in London. He's not interested. You'll have to deal with it yourself. And she goes and she's expecting it to be a bit lonely, creepy. She's expecting to feel awkward, but no, she meets up with the housemaid, and the housemaid's lovely, bit stupid, bit common maybe, but very lovely. The little girl she's got to look after is almost perfect, and then the boy comes, and the boy is even more perfect. But the boy's been sent from school for some unspeakable crime that never gets properly revealed, and these perfect children are kind of too perfect. And then she starts seeing these figures, these two figures, and she sees them, and she tells the housemaid about who she can see. And the housemaid's like, oh, that sounds like the two servants who worked here, who later died, who loved each other, and they were very kind of evil, and they were, bad influences on the children. And you're like, what's this with the bad influences on the children? And she starts thinking the ghosts are trying to influence the children, maybe even possess the children. And then as it goes on, she starts thinking that the children can see them and the children are complicit. And then, of course, the question now is, are there ghosts? Is it a ghost story? Or is it a story about this very sexually repressed, slightly nutty woman who's going crazy and convincing everyone else, including the children, that ghosts are after them? And I think the whole point of it is you're not supposed to... It can be one or the other. You could read one chapter one way, one chapter another way. You could read the whole book one way, the whole book the other way. You could try and balance in the middle, which is probably the most fun. It could be one, could be the other. And it's really well done for that. And it's got a really... It's really gripping. And it can be gripping either because evil ghosts are coming to get some children, or because she's the danger to the children because she keeps seeing these bloody evil ghosts everywhere. And it's very good and very gripping, and I very much enjoyed it. So my next short sort of creepy thing, not all of this, only one. I read The Invisible Man by H.G Wells, and I read it because I watched the film The Invisible Man first. And I don't recommend you watch the film first. It's a brilliant film, but you'll hear the voices from the film, especially Claude Rains, who's got this gorgeous voice. And you'll hear Una O'Connor. And it's a bit hard to read when you're hearing the voices from the film and you're seeing the film, because the film, especially the beginning, is very much based on the book. So it's by H.G Wells. Snowy night in a Sussex village, and it does a real good job of making Sussex very Sussexy of a way it's not anymore, with Sussex dialect and Sussex sort of as if it's all cut off from the world. So this little Sussex village, and this man turns up, and he's all bandaged, and he's grumpy and cruel, and he starts to lag on his rent, and things go missing from various houses around by, and eventually people pest him, so he reveals himself as invisible. And as this invisible man, he can go anywhere, and he could go and rob people, and he could be with you. He could be here right now listening to us. And so, like, there's a manhunt, and he goes to an old college friend and sort of forces him to help him. And unlike the film, in the film, part of the invisibility serum is what's driving him mad. In this, he's just a really nasty guy who happens to become invisible. And so he just thinks of all the nasty things he could do with his invisibility. But also the fact that being invisible sucks. Because, yes, you can go and steal money, but then you've got floating money. You can't hide it on your person. You can't spend it. You can't enjoy anything. And so when it comes to the end, you don't feel all that sorry for the invisible man, because he sucked. He was rubbish. And also, I'm sure it's because of the film, but I couldn't get out of my head the fact that when he's fully invisible, he's naked. So I just thought, here comes the invisible man. I can hear him, because I can hear his little penis slapping against his legs. He's attacking people. I think just kick him in the ghoulies. If his invisible hands around your throat, you can think, right about there. As Dave Lister once said, one swift knee in the happy sacks will bring anyone down. I just couldn't stop thinking of him, not as the invisible man, just the naked man. And because a lot of it's in winter, maybe it wouldn't be flapping about, because it'd be sucked in. Who knows? But I think some of that camp definitely comes into the film, which is maybe why I saw it in the book, but I think some of it's in the book as well. There's only so unnerving a naked invisible person could be. If he did just more watching people and blackmailing, maybe. But the fact he tries to do robbery, maybe. I don't know. But yeah, Invisible Man, I enjoyed it. It was fun, but maybe it would have been more impactful if I hadn't seen the film first. Okay, so the next book, I told you there's a lot this time. It's called The Writing in the Stone by Irving Finkel. And Irving Finkel is a Syriologist who reads cuneiform tablets in the British Museum. And he looks exactly like you would want one of those people to look. And he's very interesting. I've watched some videos of him and I've read some of his books about cuneiform and stuff. But this is a novel. Well, it's a novella. As you can see, it's very spaced out. It's very beautifully done, actually. And it's set in sort of Assyria. Hammurabi, I think, is the king in it. And it starts with this priest finding a stone, and the stone has all writing on it, but he can't read the writing. So he goes to the big town, presents it to the king, who presents it to his chief exorcist. And the chief exorcist is a psychopath. And the fact that he can't read these things drives him crazy. And he goes on a mission to find a way of reading the stone, or find more stones like it, or in fact find a cave of the stones. And it's essentially a Gothic novel, but it's a Gothic novel set in Assyria. And it brings this whole flavour to it. And all of the beliefs, or what we suppose to be the beliefs, or what we know of their beliefs, are in this. But they're not. It's not saying, oh, they weren't real, this is what they believed. No, these things are real. So there are real sort of demons and monsters and all these peculiar magical things you have to do, like do things with heads and put soil in it and all this. And the exorcist is a psycho and kills people in horrible ways, and his sort of helper is a big mute giant man with 3 testicles, who very rapey, and in some ways it's a bit like Vathek, if you remember Vathek, who was it was written by William Beckford, but it was set about a sort of a Muslim, what's the word, leader, can't remember the name of what they, sort of caliph, that's it, who because of his evil ways and his lust for knowledge finds his way to hell. And this is kind of what happens in this, and it's very fun and very creepy, and I very much enjoyed it. Very short though. I could have had more of it, actually. So next thing I read, again, is a very short one. This actually has all the novels of Thomas Love Peacock. I only read Nightmare Abbey, which came out the same year as Northanger Abbey. Has the same sort of subject. It's taking the piss out of Gothic, but it's also taking the piss out of the Romantics. So Thomas Love Peacock knew Shelley and people like that, and he's taking the piss out of them. There's not much of a plot, really. There's a guy called Skythrop, who is Shelley. He lives in Nightmare Abbey with his father, and he thinks gloomy things, and he writes a book that only sells 7 copies, but he reckons that the 7 people who've read it will probably change the world, because he's such an important writer. And he hangs out with a whole bunch of sort of eccentrics. There's one man who just keeps saying, the devil's coming, the devil's coming. There's another one who's based on Tennyson, who won't give a straight answer to anything and will only believe things if they're ridiculous. There's a vicar who's just happy to play along. There's a fish man who's obsessed with mermaids and is hunting for mermaids. There's all these people. He falls in love with his cousin, because, Victorian era, they do. And his cousin is the daughter of the only happy person in the book. And she kind of likes him and kind of doesn't. She mostly likes winding him up. But then he's betrothed to the vicar's daughter, who goes missing. And then another woman just appears, and she's a very intense woman. And he loves them both. He keeps one hidden, and then it all comes out. And actually, they both marry other people. And so, yeah, it's not much of a plot. It's really a chance for Thomas loved Peacock to take the piss out of things and to be clever. It's a bit like Oscar Wilde in that you kind of love it and hate it at the same time for its cleverness. He's clearly having a lot of fun, and it's still fun to read, but it would have been a lot more fun if you were in on some of the jokes or around that time. It's a very specific satire about some very specific people and thoughts and ideas at the time. And so the joke gets filtered coming down to you, but it's still enjoyable. It's just not, I laughed a few times, but I would have laughed a lot more had I been a follower of Romanticism in the early 19th century. The next book I read was called The Georgian Child by F. Gordon Rowe, and this was rubbish. Really didn't like this. He'd written one called The Victorian Child, and it was a book about Victorian childhood based on some research, based on his memories of his late Victorian childhood and him talking to his elders about their Victorian childhood. And he'd obviously, judging by the reviews on the back of this, that was obviously very good. But now he's written The Georgian Child and he's not really that interested in it. So most of it, for example, it's called The Georgian Child because most of it's 1790 to 1810. It's not 18th century childhood. A lot of it's just very obvious. An awful lot of it was just going back to those same uncles and things and saying, what do you remember about your childhood? Oh, well, I remember in 1830 it was like this. And him going, yeah, it was probably the same in the 18th century. It's probably the same in 1730. And it was just, he just wasn't interested, I don't think, in writing it. And it made me not very interested in reading it. I did finish it, but didn't like it. And then the last thing I read, another short, weird, creepy thing, Hieroglyphic Tales by Horace Walpole. I've read this before, but very, very long time ago. And he printed 7 of these. These weren't really supposed to be that read. A few of them he sent to friends. I mean, one of them, which was all about, it ended with someone swallowing a fetus pickled in a jar by accident. He sent to a woman who just lost a baby. I can't quite get his thinking there. Maybe he thought, well, they'll laugh later. So, but a hieroglyphic tale is essentially him riffing on fairy tales. So there's a take on the Arabian Nights where the Scheherazade essentially bores the emperor to sleep and then kills him. She talks about church history, bores him to sleep. Probably my favourite one was about these 3 daughters, 3 princesses. The older one has the problem of not existing, which is a problem because they got to marry her off for the others. But luckily, a suitor comes who has the disability of being dead. So then things ensue. He also has 3 legs. And one of the other daughters has 1 leg and fancies him because she thinks his extra leg will make up the difference. And he is from the kingdom of Quiffery Quimmy. There's also a small girl in this called Pissy Missy, the Duchess of Jordan. And Jordan was a potty. And Pissy Missy rides a pistachio shell driven by an elephant and a ladybird, and they go off, and there's a tower with 80,000 husbands in it, and she accidentally suffocates them, so the witch who owned the husbands sets demons on her, but the elephant farts and it splits the demons away, and then they all get picked up by a giant hummingbird who takes them to King Solomon. Basically, these are just surreal, silly riffs, and where they're at the most surreal and silly, they're good fun. When they're a bit more structured or a bit less just balls to the wall nuts, they're not as fun. So there's one which is just a very standard amatory tale with a twist at the end that the two main characters were dogs. And he sent that to the owner of one of the dogs, and it was essentially like a love story between their 2 dogs. But it's not a great twist. But yeah, as long as he's being nuts, it was very fun and silly and enjoyable. And so that's all I read. Quite a bit. Though I'm cheating on one because one of them was read through August and September as well. But there you go. So yeah, I'm rehearsing the play next week. What am I thinking of reading? I had an idea, didn't I, that I wanted to... Oh, I might go for Count of Monte Cristo. A bit early for a big read, but I fancy it. I've got to fix up all the things. Well, I've fixed up most of the things that are broken. I've got to keep them fixed and unbroken. That's a long video today, that's because there was a lot. And thank you. Bye-bye.